Good morning. I am the Explicit Empress. I am an emotional and spiritual health advisor, conduit of the divine, haver of opinions, part-time witch, Virgo sun, Scorpio moon, Aquarius rising, Pisces Lilith. It's nice to see you here on my channel today. We are going to be looking at the astro weather for the rest of February. If you are a long-time viewer of the astro weather, I have been quite vacant and I'm sure you understand if you understand the astro weather. So we are going to be walking through this astro weather in a little bit of a different style than I would normally do. And that is because I am trying a new way to be able to get this information out to you instead of all of the Virgo notes that I usually need to take to get it to you. So we're going to be starting off the astro weather with the moon cycles. And if you would like to follow along on my Instagram and my TikTok, I will be putting up void moon and moon energy updates as the moon moves. So please go and give me a follow on TikTok and Instagram if you would like to have that information every couple of days. If you are a Cancer sun or Cancer moon, or you have a lot of Cancer energy in your chart, I highly advise you to come along and follow on Instagram and TikTok, because a Cancer energy is actually moving with the energy of the moon. So it will help you quite a lot to understand what is going on every 2.5 days when you are shifting energy. So let's get into the moons. We woke up this morning with a Gemini moon. A Gemini moon is a very fast-paced moon. It is the moon that we've had over the last 2 days that has been making these days move very quickly. It's a busy moon. Our mind is active. Gemini rules the 3rd house. So we want to have conversations. We want to have new ideas. Our mind wants to work and learn. It does make, on the negative side, it can make people a little bit manipulative with the way they are talking. So be aware of that. Now that Gemini moon goes void today at 2:20 p.m. It is only void for 4 minutes. So during that 4 minutes, as you know, if you have followed me before, make sure that you are not making any big decisions, not checking out any big grocery carts, any big shopping online. Void moons are times when we don't have all of the pieces of the information, because the energy of the moon, which rules our emotional state, is not a set energy and everything is a little bit hazy. So that Gemini moon going void at 2:20 until 2:24 p.m. where it shifts into Cancer. Now, a Cancer moon loves itself, okay? Cancer and the moon are best friends. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. Now, Cancer moon days can be quite lazy days, because we do want to just be within our nurturing space. We want to be around people that make us feel safe. These are cozy blankets, warm drinks, all your favorite snack kind of days. Not a great energy to start off on a Monday, because we already got that fast-paced energy until 2 p.m. So once we kind of get to the afternoon, you might find yourself feeling a little bit lazy, a little bit laid back, a little bit on the emotional side. So all day Tuesday in a Cancer moon, Wednesday, that Cancer moon until 5:37 p.m. when that Cancer moon goes void. So it will be void from 5:37 p.m. until 12:40 a.m. the next day. So after 5:30 tomorrow, no big decisions, no big shopping sprees, no checking out those carts that you need in a certain period of time. And then we move to a Leo moon just after midnight on Thursday morning. Now, a Leo moon is that fun moon. Leo is ruled by the sun. It wants the sun to revolve around it. It wants the sun to shine on it. One of the tricks of a Leo moon is that we all become very aware of fake people, fake ideals. So making sure while we are in that Leo moon that you are standing in your truth, because nobody's going to believe you if you do not. Just be aware that a Leo moon can put people a little bit into their ego, and with the energy that we are moving towards as we go towards this eclipse season, there is a lot of power and a lot of ego. So make sure you're checking yourself throughout the day. Now on Thursday and most of Friday, we're in a Leo moon. The Leo moon goes void on Friday at 3:18 p.m. and it is a long void, okay? It will be void until 12:37 on Saturday, okay? So that is all of the afternoon on Friday and the morning of Saturday. Okay, so when these long moon phases are about, and we'll take a look when we get to the astro weather for that day, there are often a lot of things going on in that dark space, a lot of mysteries needing to be solved. So make sure during that Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, you are not making any big decisions, particularly because we are dealing with Leo and Virgo, particularly when it comes to how you're organizing and showing up for yourself. Taking notes is fine. Writing down thoughts that you have is fine. Really making sure you're not in ego, because it is that Leo full moon, a Leo void moon moving into a Virgo full moon, meaning that we can be in our ego quite a lot. And with a Virgo full moon, we can be overly critical. So trying not to make any big decisions there, okay? So then on that Saturday, 12:37 p.m., we see that Virgo moon kick in. Now, Virgo moon wants you to work, and this one is going to want you to work quite a lot because it is a super full moon and it will perfect at 11:30 p.m. We are Melbourne time. So Saturday night, we see that Virgo full moon. Now, full moons are moons that are bringing things to the light. So with it being a Virgo full moon, these are things that are going to be related to our 6th house, which are our house of health, so which is the health of not just your body, but your mind, your spiritual health, your emotional health. It is an all-round feeling of health and your connection to it that is ruled by the 6th house. So there will be some things coming to light about what your health looks like in all departments. And just be aware that a Virgo moon, particularly a full moon, it can be very critical of self, very critical of others, and it can want to push away any emotional feelings that come up during that time. So journaling is an awesome thing to be doing during a Virgo moon. Also grounding, getting your feet in the sand, getting your feet on the earth, and really allowing the emotions that come up to be felt throughout your whole body. Virgo is a sign that needs to feel particularly its rage in its whole body and to ground that somehow. And doing that in nature for a Virgo is very good. Virgo is an earth sign. So all day Sunday as well, we are riding in that Virgo full moon energy. So making sure to take your time, because Virgo does like to journal and keep notes. If you think back 6 months, because this full moon is the culmination of the Virgo new moon that we had 6 months ago. So if you think back to 6 months ago, think about what you had going on, what energy you had going on. If you are somebody who manifests with a new moon, which if you're interested, check out some of my other videos. But the premise being, when we are in a new moon phase, that is the time to plant seeds. And when we are in a full moon phase, that is when we can see the results of the work we have put in for those seeds to grow. So it's a really nice time under a full moon to sit in a gratitude moment with your journal, writing down what you've achieved, writing down what is still yet to be achieved, and trying to see with that light of the full moon where you could have made changes, what you could do different, what you can do now 6 months later, standing in this place of knowing what you know after all of the growth that you've done in the last 6 months. Then we see Monday. So Monday night, we see 6:35 p.m. that Virgo moon going void. Now it's going void until Tuesday morning. So 1:29 a.m. Tuesday morning before it moves to Libra. So again, quite a long phase. And being that it's a Monday, I'm just going to put it out there. Don't be doing any grocery shopping, okay? Grocery shopping is one of the weird things that seems to be affected by a void moon, as myself and other people who track the moon can tell you. It is sort of the ideal that you go and you buy all of these groceries, say you plan for the week, and then someone invites you to dinner. You end up not feeling hungry. You don't want to eat the things, and a lot of the food that you purchase will go off because it's magic. But just be aware of that. Maybe save your grocery shopping until Tuesday, if you can. So we're waking up on Tuesday morning in a Libra moon. Now, a Libra moon is a lot more of a fun kind of moon. It makes us very aware of how we are showing up in partnerships, how we are showing up in relationships. It wants to shine, it wants to do fun things, and it wants to feel balanced. So we get that Libra moon all day Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, quite early, 5:21 a.m., it goes void. So we will be waking up on Wednesday, most of us, with a void moon. So remembering that, because it's very hard for a lot of people, particularly if you have a lot of Cancer placements, to be waking up with a void moon, because when the moon is void, so we should be also. So you might find yourself quite tired on Wednesday morning because we don't see that moon shift until 2 p.m. when it moves into Scorpio in the afternoon. Now, Scorpio is an interesting moon. Scorpio is that kind of ruling the 8th house. So it's very deep on the emotional side. It likes to uncover mysteries, but it can also get a little bit in its head about whether or not people are being honest. And that's because Scorpio is it's a mysterious moon. It likes to keep things to itself. It needs to have deep connection in order to share. And so when we are under a Scorpio moon, we are feeling the need to keep things to ourselves. And because of that, we mirror that energy out onto everybody else. And we start feeling like other people are keeping things from us because they probably are. So just reminding yourself that we don't need to be taking anything that anyone is keeping from us personally, and that there is no point ruminating on things we don't know. And we are ending out that month of February on that Scorpio moon. So I will do an update for you on March when we get to it. So stay tuned if you are interested in the rest of the astro weather, all the aspects that are around until the end of February. And we're going to get into that now. If you're still with me, we are about to get into the astro weather with the aspects for the rest of February. Again, this is happening in a slightly different style if you're somebody who's watched before. I usually write pages and pages of notes for this, but it's been taking me so long to get the information out that I am trying a new way of doing it, which is just going over my basic aspects with you and really pointing out the ones that are likely to be in effect. As I mentioned in the first part, if you missed it, make sure you give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok, where I will be working toward making sure we are having the updates coming through about when the moon is void, what the moon is in, and any particularly large aspects that could have a really heavy energy on the day. As we start moving through the rest of this year, March and April is very heavy on energy. So you might want to be following along. Make sure you subscribe and share this video with anyone who you think could use it, particularly, as I always say, if you are someone who has a lot of Cancer energy in your chart, okay? You are ruled by the moon, and the energy of the universe plays quite heavily on you. So let's have a look at where we are today on the 19th, so Monday. Now, in that dream space energy, we had a couple of almost like throwing out some old patterns kind of energy. We had a semi-square with Jupiter, and we had an aspect with Pluto that was really kind of making us see how we want to expand. An expansion towards our daily movement towards comfort. And Jupiter is in Taurus and the moon is in Gemini. So the moon in Gemini really wanting us to logically think about our emotional state from both polarities, Gemini being the twins, and really understanding how either side of that polarity affects our movement forward, Jupiter in Taurus being expansion. Now, with the biquintile that the moon also made to Pluto in Aquarius, all of these movements with Pluto in Aquarius, these first times that they are showing up, are going to be quite transformative. So for the next month, we are going to be in a bit of a heavy energy as each of these aspects, each of these moons rolls through for the first time since the 1700s, because Pluto has not been in Aquarius since the 1700s. So it is very heavy on transformation and bringing up old energy, sometimes our old energy, sometimes just karmic energy that we have come into this world with. So a biquintile aspect is the kind of aspect that really shows us what we need to let go of. So in that dream space, we could have had a lot of old feelings coming up, and we might have woken up this morning in a bit of a rough mood because we had the moon squaring Neptune at 7:30 this morning as well. And so the moon in Gemini and Neptune in Pisces can create quite an illusion over what is real. And it can really make us feel like we aren't achieving the dream. So the moon in Gemini, again, ruling communication and the third house, and really wanting us to use our mind to see everything, very eager and curious. And Neptune in Pisces really brings that haze down. So the curious using our mind aspect, making a square with Neptune in Pisces, that dream space, is kind of logic versus the dream. And if you're someone who feels very off path to what you think your happiest, abundant life could look like, you might have really woken up feeling almost disenchanted about what your day was going to look like. So just keep that in mind. Now, we do have a lot of aspects today coming up to show us what it is we can get rid of in our lives, what it is we can throw out and move forward. So these aspects are about understanding our strength and really organizing and reorganizing parts of our internal psyche in order to see what it is that these patterns are holding us back from. So it's almost like we're looking at a pros and cons list to understand what it is that we need to get rid of in order to move forward. And we've got Venus involved, Mars involved, Chiron, and the North Node. And when we get this progression, Venus being our relationships, okay, Mars being our forward-taking masculine energy, so feminine energy, masculine energy, receiving energy, and forward-moving energy. And then we see Chiron, that wounded healer energy. So our wounds from the ages of 3 to 23 being activated as well, and our North Node being activated. Now, when we see this progression, this Venus, Mars, Chiron, North Node, we can look at that as running through these ideals that we might need to throw out, but how they are showing up in our relationships, in our self-worth, then how those things affect our action taking. So how we are showing up in our relationships and how that affects us moving forward and taking action and feeling like a leader. And then those two ideals coming on board and seeing how they were programmed by our Chiron wounds, by the emotional reactive programs we created from those traumas when we were young. And then we look at what of those we need to throw away, we need to move forward from in order to work towards that North Node goal, which is our greatest purpose, our most abundant future. And so there's a lot of that energy around today. And because we still are under the moon in Gemini, it is about seeing both sides. So both sides of the relationship, both sides of how you take action and how you are a leader and how you are in ego and how you're in confidence. And Aquarius energy there with both Venus and Mars really helping us to stand in our own self, our own authentic abilities, and to understand that we can handle change in those spaces, because it can be quite uncomfortable. But with Gemini and Aquarius, they're both air signs, both very logical. You can use that energy to really make some changes that you might normally be uncomfortable with. And of course, when we make changes that are potentially uncomfortable, that's when we see that Chiron wound being triggered, because it's generally something that is part of an old cycle we need to throw out. And so we see Chiron come in there to just remind us either that we need to throw it out or how much we have healed from throwing it out. And with it being a quintile aspect, it can be a little bit of a restless energy, because a lot of the time when we are making these changes, they can be quite uncomfortable, and there needs to be a level of comfort in that discomfort to be able to move through these energies. So around midday today, that is when the North Node comes in, and we might find ourselves making some small changes toward our future goals now that we kind of understand how we might have, with this energy, you might have not thought big enough. You might have not thought outside the box enough, and you might have been working toward a goal that you really need to make changes to in order to be able to move forward. So we have an amazing aspect at 2:20 p.m. today, which is the sun trining the moon. And so as we've come through today, sort of seeing what things we may have not thought big enough about, we then get this amazing sun in Aquarius. So really wanting us to stand in our true authentic weirdness and think outside the box, with this moon in Gemini, keeping our emotional state kind of flowing from one polarity to the other. And we're able to use that energy to make these changes, okay? That trine energy really empowering our ability to be rebellious with our rule structures and how we move forward. And then of course we move into, there'll be a void moon phase during there. So that sun trine the moon, that is the aspect that we see this void moon under. And with that, it means during that phase, we are really going to be able to have some thoughts that we might normally be uncomfortable with. So it is only void for 4 minutes. So anything that comes up around 2:30, make sure you're writing it down, because sometimes that energy moves in and out very quickly, and you'll find yourself later on in the evening being like, what was that thing I thought of? Okay. So this is your heads up. And again, this is something that I will put a heads up on my Instagram and my TikTok to come through to remind you throughout the day. Now, then we see, because of course, now that we've thought up these changes, we start looking at how we need to compromise our underworld. So we'll see the moon in Cancer, so moving into that kind of softer, nurturing kind of moon. And this is at 4 o'clock. And it's going to be asking Pluto, the Lord of the underworld, the Lord of all of our fears and addictions and places in the dark, in Aquarius, newly in Aquarius, it's going to be asking where compromises need to be made. And these compromises could, with Cancer moon being involved, they could be family compromises, how you're showing up for your family and where you need to maybe compromise in order to nurture yourself instead of over nurturing others, or where it is that you may need to share your feelings about things that are happening in order for you to be able to make those changes to the underworld that you need to make in order to move forward. Okay, so that's the 19th. So let's look at the 20th of February. So we've got a beautiful aspect. We've got the moon trining Saturn. So we had the moon and the sun trining yesterday being that fabulous aspect of lighting up all of the change. And then we see with Saturn coming in what it is and we need to change within our rule structure, our purpose, okay? So with that Cancer moon, again, it's going to be family, it's going to be nurturing, it's going to be about finding a level of softness in your rule structure, okay? Saturn in Pisces as well, allowing us to sort of flow with a rule structure instead of being so strict, but remembering that Big Daddy Saturn is the karmic master. He is the ruler of time and he will make sure that you have a rule structure that you need to stick to. So just be careful. Sometimes you can find yourself a little bit too strict on your rule structure when Saturn is involved. You might find that there are some energies around that feel like they're quite in charge. With this trine though, and the Cancer moon, people will be feeling a little bit softer and intuitively being able to pick up other people's energy. So Tuesday morning could be the morning to ask for a pay rise, to ask for favors of people in power. At 7:30, we see an aspect with Mercury that could be quite annoying though, okay? So this is a sort of an anxiety trigger and it's going to be relating to how you show up in communication for yourself and how maybe other people think you are a little bit weird and how that affects their comfort. And then we see Chiron jumping in, making a conjunction with our North Node. Now, when we see these conjunction aspects, they can go one of two ways. Okay, so because Chiron is in Aries and the North Node is in Aries, we can find that these two Aries energies merging, so our Chiron wounds of the past and our North Node of the future, both in Aries, we can see these merging and really creating a powerful force of standing up for who we are. And it can be almost sometimes a competition, a dominance energy between the two of them. So we might find with this aspect around today that you really are seeing how your wounds and your North Node, so your purpose and your past cycles are fighting each other. And they're fighting for power. They're fighting to be in charge. So when we are finding ourselves in those moments, we need to remember that Aries is I am energy. And if we lean into that and recognize that I am, full sentence, you are who you are, you show up who you are, we are changing who we are every second, we are moving into a different energy. And so standing in I am and understanding and trusting yourself while we are dealing with Chiron in the North Node gives us the power to see how healing the wound empowers us to move forward to our greatest and most abundant and joyful future. So at 9 a.m, again, so this is going to be quite a nice day. A lot of the aspects are very positive. We see the moon sextiling Jupiter. So this is fantastic energy, particularly for growth in family environments and places where you feel like you're with a family, okay? The moon in Cancer, wanting to nurture, wanting to love. Jupiter in Taurus, again, a very stable, very provider energy. So really seeing how the work that we have thought and gone through about standing up for ourselves actually empowers us to be better people in a family and allows us to move forward abundantly. Then we see a nice aspect where we look at that energy through the eyes of Pluto, the king of the underworld, and we see how we can use that energy to make these changes, these long-term changes to the way that we understand our fears and addictions and our negative patterns and our darkness. Then we get a Lilith jumping in. Now, Lilith is in Virgo, so she's asking us to look at how we stand up for ourselves, how the oppression of ourselves affects people around us, and also how the oppression of ourselves causes us to project that onto other people and be overly critical and oppress them. It's about how we stood up for ourselves or how we did not stand up for ourselves. It's about showing us where we have joined a team of somebody who is on the negative and oppressing, and we've joined that team just to be kind of part of the team instead of speaking our mind. So when she's showing up here with the moon in Cancer, she's saying you need to stand up for yourself in order to feel nurtured. And then we get after Lilith, because whenever she's involved, we tend to see this anxiety triggering aspect right after, because when we are facing our Lilith, which is places that we have felt guilt or shame or misunderstandings, we often get a bit of an anxiety trigger when she's around. So we will be in Pisces season, which Sun in Pisces, Pisces is a very illusion-based sign. It is deep bottom of the ocean emotional energy. It's that part of the ocean that we can't see or understand. That is the best way to understand Pisces energy. And when we are in Pisces season, we tend to want to go towards the escape instead of facing the problem. So because we have Lilith around and we are in Pisces season, we could find ourselves trying to avoid this, but really try and bring yourself back into the present and understand that you are doing the work in the present in order to get you to the future, and trying not to escape to the future before you've gotten there. So this aspect with the moon on at 9:46 p.m. could be a bit annoying, could bring up a little bit of anxiety, and it could be a little bit stressful, but it has the purpose to motivate us to move forward. So it really is asking us, with the moon in Cancer and the sun in Pisces, to look at how the realities of how we are nurturing ourselves and others, and to understand that we might make compulsive and obsessive decisions while we're in that space, and that we need to be able to kind of ground down through. Pisces and Cancer, being water signs, can get a bit stuck on the emotional vibe. So really understanding that we might need to bring in some logic, which we will see a helpful aspect then at 10 o'clock, so only 20 minutes after, where we will be able to use the energy of Venus in Aquarius. So Venus in Aquarius is somebody who, it's that energy of understanding that, in a fun way, everybody's weird. Everybody's weird in their own rights. Everybody needs to be able to be themselves and shine in their own beautiful weirdness. And with Venus in Aquarius coming up against our North Node, it's really going to show us that the best way forward is to stand in your weirdness, okay? So quite a nice day, the 20th. So then we get to the 21st of February, and we are looking at some interesting energy to start off the morning. We've got some Uranus energy around. So Uranus being that revolutionary, that lightning change, that think outside the box, that energy that can very much adapt to things. So in that dream space, we're going to be looking at how we need to adapt, how we can make changes in order to care and nurture for ourselves and others, moon in Cancer, okay? So this is going to be in relation to how you communicate and use your mind, because Mercury is involved as well. So it's really going to be trying to show you what changes you can make, trying to show you how you need to speak up for yourself, and how you need to move past any fear of how you are seen, and really, in a place of confidence, not a place of ego, show up in your true weird nature. So be showing up for yourself is really the energy here, not showing up to get external validation for your weirdness, which is a bit of a tricky situation if you are an Aquarius energy to kind of understand that, but really try and sink into that idea in your mind with Mercury around, and understand that you only need to be showing up as yourself for yourself, and you do not need external validation to validate that you are allowed to be your own weird self. Now, we will get a square up against the node, Sun in Pisces, squaring that node. So the Sun in Pisces, again, making us maybe want to escape the reality. And we could be looking to escape the reality of what it means to move towards our goal. With that aspect in the dream space, that would have really kind of shown us what we need to let go of. And so with this semi-square to the node, it could be something, a dream that you've had that's not working out, that you need to make changes to and let go of. And Pisces Sun is not really going to like that. So it might be a little uncomfortable. And we're going to be looking at that. We've got a quintile to Jupiter, a square to Chiron, and an aspect to Saturn. So those aspects are really telling us, what do I need to throw out in order to expand, to have this daily comfort in how I move forward? What do I need to let go of from that Chiron wound, from past cycles? How is that showing up now and causing me to have escapist tendencies? Now, escapist tendencies look different to everyone. With this Pisces energy around, it could be addictive escapist tendencies. So we are talking everything from drugs, alcohol, gambling, to overly giving. So self-sacrifice as well can be an escapist tendency. So really looking at how we've done those things and how they are affecting our ability to move forward and stand up for ourselves. And we will have some anxiety triggers around that because the aspect with Saturn is pretty heavy. It is the moon in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So that big daddy Saturn who wants to bring down the rules, he is going to be really looking at ways that we allow our Chiron wound to shape the way we show up for family environments, for nurturing with self and others. And that can be very uncomfortable. Then that Pisces moon makes a biquintile. That Sun Pisces makes a biquintile to the moon in Cancer, and then a quincunx to Mercury. So these two aspects very close together, and then a trine to Neptune. So this is the energy in the evening, well, in the late afternoon, of trying to organize all of the thoughts that we've had, trying to organize what it is that has been affecting our ability to see clearly at what we need, how we need to nurture ourselves, and how we need to communicate from a place of authenticity, and then looking at how we might need to reshape our dream, moon in Cancer, Neptune in Pisces, how we might need to reshape our dream so as not to feel threatened and fear, because those two things are what push us into escapist tendencies, okay? So a bit of a wild energy day on the 21st, but remembering that it is all working towards the greater good of healing old wounds in order to turn them into power and be a transmuting energy genius. And then the 22nd. So let's take a look at this energy. There's some pretty heavy energy of Lilith around in that dream space. So we could really be with the moon in Leo now. So we will really be seeing how our ego has shown up, or how someone else's ego has shown up to oppress us. And we will be looking at how that affected our creativity from our space of Leo energy. So Leo being ruled by the sun. So how we've allowed these old patterns to form cycles that we don't want to be in, okay? And Pluto in Aquarius, okay, this is the first time it's coming up against a Leo moon. So it is the energy of really looking at that for the first time, and it's the beginning of that story. And it could be quite heavy for a lot of people because Leo and Aquarius are quite big on looking at who we are as our own authentic selves and how we show up. So huge energy around about that during the whole morning space, okay? We have a quintile to Uranus, a quincunx to the moon, and a biquintile to Saturn, all before 7 a.m. And so this whole story is about looking at those old places we've felt guilt, we've felt shame, we've been misunderstood about how we are showing up for ourselves and doing work for ourselves, and how those things need to shift, need to flow forward and change now with Pluto in Aquarius. We really need to be moving more towards how our behavior is affecting the collective around us and be a little bit more responsible for that. So going through, we've got the moon in Leo, we've got the sun in Pisces, and then back to the moon. So really moving from that state of owning your emotions to looking at how you create illusion for yourself, and then back to how you allow your emotions to rule your purpose, to rule over your rule structure, and how that can make you a little stuck in ego. So big ego death energy coming up in that dream space. And then we are waking up with that biquintile to Saturn. So big daddy Saturn energy around at 6:30 a.m. Now, the afternoon is very power hungry. So after that energy in the morning where we may have felt very emotional, we see a lot of logic and fire coming down in the afternoon. So we get an opposition, we get a moon opposition to Venus, we get a moon opposition to Mars, we get a quintile to Jupiter and a conjunction to Mars. Now, this energy, so this is from 2 p.m. until 6:14 p.m. So this is about how we are showing up for ourselves authentically in relationships, and how we require particular types of people in order to feel most balanced in relationships, and how we require our relationships to have people in them that allow us to shine our own weirdness, okay? Now, that's going to really show itself in not a negative energy, but in an overpowering energy, because both of these being oppositions, okay? So it is a stressful tug of war sometimes. It is a fight for dominance. Now, the positive is that these energies can complement each other. So if you are someone who struggles to stand up for yourself, this opposition energy is really going to push you to stand up for yourself. Leo and Aquarius know how to stand up for themselves, and it could give you an idea of the benefits of doing that, okay? It could really give you an idea of that, or it could show you where your weaknesses lie in that, okay? It could go either way. And once you realize that, when we move into this Jupiter and then Mars, we see this quintile to Jupiter is going to allow us to look at what we need to throw out in order to move forward. And then the conjunction to Mars, because that's Venus in Aquarius and Mars in Aquarius. So they've both been through looking at our emotional nature earlier in this little run of energy. Then we've looked at how our mind and our communication are holding us back. So how we are not standing up for ourselves and how that holds us back from forward movement. And then that last aspect is this conjunction. So the really huge merging of Aquarius energies in relationships, feminine energy, and in action-taking leadership, masculine energy, which is Mars. And so this offers a really huge force of individual energy, of showing up as your weird self kind of energy and taking action from a place of balance, okay? So really heavy on that shift on the 22nd. On the 23rd, not much energy around, but it's some wounding energy, all right? So not much in the dream space, because after yesterday, you probably need a little break. But we have got the moon in Leo, and it is running through a little aspect story of showing us how showing up for ourselves really helps us heal any places in the past we have created programming around where we've been misunderstood, where somebody has made us feel guilt or shame, and how we have allowed that to program our way forward. So again, with Lilith and Chiron around, it can be a little bit of an anxiety-driven day, depending on what your past cycles look like. There will be a square to Uranus at 3 p.m, and that will be a bit of a power struggle energy, okay? So a square is a war aspect, and it is the moon in Leo, ego-driven, coming up against Uranus in Taurus, very stubborn on needing change, because Uranus being change. So you might find yourself, your ego being a little bit triggered with the requirements of change that are needed to move through these Lilith and Chiron wounds and shames. At 5:30 p.m, which is the last aspect of the day, we get a biquintile with our dream space. And this is a nice energy after that heavy Lilith and Chiron energy that's around all day, because it will help us kind of work through and understand what it is we want to keep, what it is we want to throw out, what wounds we've already healed, what we're holding on to. And it will really help us do that in a kind of softer space, with Neptune being in Pisces, okay? On the 24th of February, we have got some aspects that are going to need to make us stay in a compromise energy, okay? Now, we will be waking up with the quincunx to Neptune, so that is our ego really needing to make some compromises on how we are allowing ourselves to imagine and heal from wounds. And then we see a nice aspect of communication with Pluto in Aquarius. So Mercury will be in Pisces, and that kind of gives communication a bit of a hazy nature. So just be aware, with Mercury in Pisces, people might find it difficult to understand you, might find it difficult to sort of get through that Neptune haze that Pisces does sometimes leave around, that dream space, that illusion-based curtain coming down. So while Mercury is in Pisces, it's really important to be asking questions to clarify and not allowing yourself to make up what's in between the lines if you can't see the truth in what somebody is saying. So it's really that energy, it's the energy around of how we do need to use the imagination space, but we have to be very discerning about whether we are sort of using escape tendencies or we are just trying to delude ourselves, okay? So it's about really looking at the truth through the illusion curtain and being able to see where we might delude ourselves, might lie to ourselves about what is actually happening. We have a positive aspect with Venus in Aquarius making a semi-sextile to Saturn. So that's Big Daddy Saturn wanting to make the rule structure, wanting to bring in the karma. And so it's really going to be looking at how you are showing up in relationships and what you want to base your new rule structures around, okay? We'll have to make some compromises with Pluto in Aquarius. We'll have to make some compromises in our deep underworld cycles. So cycles that we feel are very connected to us. We'll have the moon in Virgo coming up against that Pluto in Aquarius. So the compromises are going to likely be about how we give to others, how we work, whether we work hard enough, all right? There will be some anxiety and some irritating energy around it because with a Virgo moon, we can be quite critical of ourselves and others. So just be aware of that. A little bit of pressure and anxiety around whether or not we're working hard enough toward our future goals. And with the moon in Virgo and Mercury in Pisces making an opposition at 4 p.m., that energy can be the energy of really lying to yourself, okay? Really lying to yourself about not being worthy, not being good enough, not being able to achieve your goals. So if you find yourself in that space, in that energy, you need to remind yourself that you are being shown those things in order to work through your own negative self-talk, okay? Because later in that afternoon, we see that anxiety trigger again opening up on the Chiron wound. And then we see that delusionary Mercury making a square to Chiron. So a really kind of war aspect with how we are deluding ourselves, okay, on the 24th. So really making sure that we aren't being too harsh, aren't being too critical of ourselves or others, and understand that that energy is around for us to be able to work through old patterns and figure out whose voice that is being judgmental to us, because our true inner self does not talk crap about us, okay? So if you find yourselves in places of talking crap, talking down, being negative, feeling unworthy, ask yourself, whose voice is that? Because I'm telling you right now, it's not your higher self, it's not your inner child. It is a voice of somebody from your past who is making you feel that way. Let's look at the 25th of February. So that dream space is really heavy on letting go. We have got a biquintile with Pluto and Lilith, and then a quincunx to Mars, and then an opposition to Saturn, and then Lilith jumping back in to be involved. So that story there in the morning is really about sorting through some of the ideas that come up when we need to end cycles. And we're going to be looking at those things through Pluto, the Lord of the Underworld. We are going to be looking at those through how we show up for ourselves in relationships, and what it is about some of those energies that show up in relationship dynamics that are coming from that underworld cycle that needs to be ended. Then because of that, we will have to make some compromises to the way that we take action. And with Mars in Aquarius and the moon in Virgo, it's going to be a compromise that goes against the way that we show up as our individual selves. Mars in Aquarius wanting us to take action through changes, and the moon in Virgo being discerning and critical. So we are looking at how we are changing our inner rule system, our inner purpose ideals, and how we build real rule structures about how we show up and take action. And those things are going to trigger those Lilith placements of our guilts and shames and places we are misunderstood. And it is again another moment where we are being urged to look at how allowing guilt, shame, misunderstandings from the past to hinder our forward path. And that's either in the way that we take action, or in the way that we don't even allow ourselves to experience the full idea of what we want our end goal to be. So all of that taking place in that morning space from 2:55 a.m. up until 9 a.m. And then for the rest of that morning, we'll be looking at how that energy affects our expansion and growth, and how we see our ability to move forward and expand in relation to where we are being held back by these old cycles. Now, the dream space on the 26th is really helpful energy about adapting to changes. So we may have seen yesterday with that energy around a lot of places where cycles needed to end, and a lot of places where we had to adapt to a new way of doing things, whether that be in the physical world or in our inner world, with Pluto in Aquarius being around there too. So we will be looking with this Uranus energy that we are going to be waking up with and feeling all morning, the moon in Virgo trining Uranus in Taurus, and those earthy signs really helping us ground down into this idea of making changes. And with Virgo around, these changes are likely to be changes to the way that you run your routine. Now, with Virgo around, it's a really good energy to start making daily habit changes that best lead you to the ideal goal, and Uranus really supporting making changes. So if you're someone who has been trying to bring in a new routine, this is the day to really start it, getting into it, really understanding it. And it's going to probably come up in a relationship dynamic, personal work, or other sorts of relationships that you go through during the day, maybe with your family as well. People might not understand these changes that you are making because we do have a semi-square at lunchtime between Venus in Aquarius and Neptune in Pisces. And that can really be people not understanding why you have made these changes. And then that's going to likely trigger some anxiety and really kind of activate your ego in a way of feeling like you need to really stand up for yourselves. And just remembering that when these anxieties and these triggers are activated, they are just lessons for us to be able to see what it is that needs to adapt and to help us push past these obstacles that have now shown up. And it will, by the end of that night, we see an opposition between the moon in Virgo and the Neptune in Pisces, whereas earlier we get that semi-square between Venus and Neptune. So with that moon opposition, it's going to show us that our emotional nature is what we need to lean into to make these decisions. And by aligning our emotional nature and understanding the emotions involved in setting these dreams, as well as the emotions involved in healing our wounds, we start to begin to understand that it is only us that can choose our way forward, and that other people's opinions on whether or not our ideas aren't going to work are not helpful to understanding what our purpose is and how we should best move forward. Again, with the anxiety trigger showing up in a relationship dynamic in the evening at 7:19 p.m. with that moon in Virgo and Venus in Aquarius, we could be very critical towards others who aren't understanding us under that energy, because we will be kind of reacting to that trigger. And in a lot of people, it could be the projection of that discomfort of somebody not understanding who you are. So really reminding yourself throughout that day to stay adaptive, to understand why you need these changes, why you are choosing to move forward that way, and not trying to go into places of over-explaining yourself to somebody who is set on misunderstanding you, okay? So remembering with all of this Aquarius energy around, everybody is feeling like they want to stand in their authentic selves. And with Mercury also being there in Pisces, people will be wanting to sort of overshadow your thoughts with their own deluded ideas of how that should look. So just be aware of that. And we are being supported to stand in our authentic selves through this. And we're almost being challenged in a way that is saying, are you going to let things of the past and other people's opinions stop you from being who you are? Then we get to the 27th and we are very active in the dream space because, of course, we've made all of those changes and stood up for ourselves yesterday. And so Lilith is going to come in and remind us that there's potentially some little triggers that came up yesterday that we may have got a bit heated about that need to be looked at. And we've got some really beautiful aspects with Uranus, and we've got a trine to Pluto, and we will get a little bit of a trigger on that anxiety with some changes that we need to make that might feel like they are unbalancing a relationship. But all in all, that morning space is really about adapting to those ideas that you came up with yesterday, maybe those new habits, maybe really settling those into what you want to do and setting your goals a bit more strictly. So we will see the moon move into Libra, and that's going to lighten that energy of being very self-critical a little. And we're going to see a few aspects running through there with the Libra moon, asking us to rebalance. Will be the first one around 10:30 with the moon in Libra and Uranus in Taurus. And then we see some nice aspects that could be a little bit irritating because they are asking us to sort of look at how we are expanding, to look at how we are communicating, and to look at how we are allowing illusion and other people's projection of illusion to unbalance us with the moon in Libra there. So this could be inside of relationship dynamics. You might find that your daily habits have affected somebody around you or have affected a work situation, and people are not very comfortable with that because a lot of people are not okay with change. So there is that energy where you need to be a little bit flexible, a little bit understanding, but also still standing in your truth. But with that Libra moon, we are being prompted to see how that is potentially causing an imbalance in that collective environment. But still being okay with the fact that somebody else is uncomfortable with our decision, that we still believe in that decision. So there is that level that Libra moon energy can struggle with, which is putting somebody else before yourself. But we are being asked to stay in a compromise energy in order to stand in our truth while still acknowledging that that might make somebody else uncomfortable. And there is a bit of battle energy around that with Mars in Aquarius squaring Jupiter in Taurus. So these very stubborn energies, and it will be potentially a restriction on what you thought your forward movement might look like. So with Jupiter in Taurus, there could be a situation show up in the physical world, in something that you felt like was yours. So whether that's a relationship or a material situation, and that you require to take action and not really working out, not really going your way. And then we'll see some compromise energy roll in to help us out. So that'll be 7:30 that kind of battle energy rolls in. And then around 9 o'clock, we do get the energy of compromise. And that compromise is really looking at how relationship balance and balance with other people and the collective, how that fits into our own personal rule structure with Saturn being around, okay? So a bit of an interesting day where we are being sort of challenged to stand in our strength while still seeing other people potentially react negatively to this new version of ourselves and these habits that we have now implemented. And then February 28th, the dream space is very quiet. Again, some Uranus energy around with that moon in Libra, which is actually quite nice for being able to work through some thoughts and some emotions that may have come up yesterday when we were standing our ground, and really releasing any sort of attachment we had to the way that people saw this authentic version of ourselves showing up inside of that energy. We have a really nice moon in Libra trining Venus in Aquarius at 5:20 a.m., which will hopefully give us a nice feeling around authenticity in those dynamics and really lock in that it's okay to be ourselves and that we can still stay in a state of balance while somebody else is potentially imbalanced or triggered by us staying in our balance. Now, we'll be waking up with that need to throw stuff out kind of energy. We've got 3 biquintals and then an opposition to the North Node. So that's Mercury, that's the Sun and the Moon and Saturn all involved in that energy of needing to kind of sort, an order. So you might feel a bit restless, a bit rushed during this energy because you are trying to figure out whether standing up as who you are, whether that is worth staying in these relationships that may not be accepting of your new changes, or whether you should move on from that and let those go so that you can truly stand in your new truth. And looking at how that will affect your forward movement. So if this shows up for you on your birth chart in a work situation, this is the kind of idea where you have changed a daily habit, you have changed the way that you're doing things, and people in your workspace are not adapting to it. And you really asking yourself, is this the place I want to be if I can't be accepted for how I want to show up? And that will be a bit of a difficult thing to decide on because we will have to look at that through places we might have felt shamed or there might have been misunderstandings. And you might be somebody with Lilith around here, you might be somebody who hates to feel like a quitter. And with this energy of needing to let go, you really might have that Chiron wound triggered as well, of where you really didn't stand up for yourself, where you really needed to put yourself first in order to head towards your greatest joy, your greatest balance. And at the end of the day, we're going to come through that very questioning of the way that we do stuff, very triggered by others, very likely. And we get a quincunx to Uranus at the end of the day. So the moon is in Libra, which is great. It wants to look at both sides of the argument and it wants to communicate from a place of understanding both sides of the argument. And with Uranus in Taurus, it can be a bit of a stubborn energy, but it's stubborn towards making changes for your own best interest. And with this quincunx aspect, it's going to help us stay in a compromise energy in order to sort of see which is the best way to go. Now, this energy can be a little bit annoying because it can make it difficult to see what the decision is, but all in all, it is just asking you to be flexible with the way that you move forward and to not be so strict in your own rule structure and how you are used to seeing things. And then the last day of the month, February 29. Now, this is a busy day, because if you look at the way that the last 10 days have gone, it's a lot about standing in our true self and allowing that to find balance in the reality of our everyday, even though people may not be into it. And so the 29th, rolling this month all into a ball, provides a lot of energy that could be quite anxiety triggering as we look back over those 10 days. And we are looking at that dream space being filled with all of the anxiety triggers, and then waking up needing to compromise on a dream. So we have a conjunction with Saturn at 2 a.m. and that's a double Pisces conjunction with Mercury and Saturn. So there is this idea that we could think that we are deluding ourselves, and there is a curtain of haze, of fogginess that will be around this whole situation, because with that double Pisces energy, we are inclined to lean further into wanting to escape into the illusion. Then we see the Sun in Pisces and the Moon in Libra meeting up, and that is at 39 degrees Pisces and 24 degrees Libra. And so we are, with the Moon 24 degrees in Libra, we are more prompted to see the balance here. And so the anxiety trigger coming in here is the Sun lighting up that we are deluding ourselves. So we'll be heavily in that delusion in the dream space. Then the Sun comes across to make this aspect, and it really sees what it is that we've been deluding ourselves about. And then we jump into the Saturn energy, which is that sort of trigger onto how we allow that delusion to set our rule structure about how we move forward and how we judge ourselves. And then we look at how any kind of hazy communication that we have provided other people, or we have been on the receiving end of, how we've allowed that to unbalance us instead of standing in our own truth and knowing what our own truth is. And that is that idea of allowing other people's opinions to shake you off what you feel like is your true path. And Libra energy really does like to see all sides of the argument, but it can fall into needing that external validation. And so we are trying to understand under this energy that while it is okay to get all of the pieces of the puzzle, why it is okay to ask people for advice and their thoughts and their opinions, that at the end of all of those research conversations, we still need to be able to have our own truth. So we need to be able to collect this information without leaning into whichever one sounded the most persuasive, okay? We need to be able to hear the arguments as if they are all on the same plane, and then make a decision that comes from our truth. And that's really what the last 10 days of energy has been about, is teaching us that. Now we see a really heavy energy at 4:32 p.m., which is the Moon squaring Pluto. Now the Moon is in Scorpio at this time, and Pluto is in Aquarius. Both of them are at 1 degree. And this Scorpio moon, so Scorpio being ruled by Pluto, the Pluto energy is very heavy here, and this is a power dynamic struggle. This is the rebellion of Aquarius and the deep, long-term commitment vibe of Scorpio. And in so that's your deep emotional nature and how you require deep connection with people, really coming up against this idea of shifting your underworld in a very revolutionary way. And these two energies are battling for supremacy, and really it's like the dark side of that Libra idea of seeing both sides of the argument. It's as if you see both sides of the argument and you are trying to decide which one to believe, and they are fighting each other, okay? And then by 5:16 p.m., we will see that energy moving through a more personal channel, because the Moon in Scorpio will make a semi-square to Lilith. So not only will we be fighting to see which side we should be on, who should we believe, which path should I take, we then will be looking at that through, am I making this forward movement by allowing cycles of the past based around misunderstandings and guilt and shame? Am I allowing those things to guide me forward? And so those two, because Scorpio being that deep emotional space, and Lilith being the dark side of the Moon, it can be quite a dark energy. So that is in the afternoon, and that'll start rolling in from about 4 p.m. When we get to 7:30, which is the last aspect of the month, we see the moon making a biquintile to Neptune. Now, this will be a deep kind of hazy energy because Scorpio being that dark space and Pisces and Neptune being that dream delusion space. And it's going to be really going through and looking at all of this dark energy that showed up during that square to Pluto, during that semi-square to Lilith, and looking at the triggers that came up, looking at the emotional reactions we had, looking at how we reacted to other people's emotional reactions, okay? And really understanding, again, like with that Libra energy, which parts, which research, which relationships work best for us and which are not worth the energy of understanding. Remembering that not everybody is on the same path of evolution or healing, and that some people will just be intent on misunderstanding you, because if they are still in ego, they do not want to hear your opinion, and they will be very triggered by people who have this ability to understand the whole, the collective, both sides of the argument. So that is the astro weather for the remaining days in February. I hope this was helpful to someone. It was very helpful for me to do. So make sure you subscribe. I will be trying to keep these up to date moving forward, particularly because the March and April energy is about to really start kicking off into eclipse energy. So we will start feeling the effects of this eclipse energy coming up as we move into March. So be aware of that. Highly advise journaling about your experiences that start coming up in March so that you can really understand the eclipse story for yourself, which we are in part 4 of a 5-part story. So really helpful to be journaling during these eclipse cycles so that you can understand what the energy is trying to teach you. If you would like a birth chart reading, make sure you check out my website. I can do an astrological counseling session, which is looking at your birth chart in relation to what this energy is trying to help you learn. There are many different options, so go and check my website. Also, if you are interested in a tarot reading, you can find that on my website as well. Make sure you are following me on TikTok and or Instagram, where I will be trying to post daily about just the base energy that's going on during the day and what moon we are dealing with. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have heavy Cancer placements in your chart, I highly advise following the moon energy, because your everyday is very programmed around the moon, who changes its energy every 2.5 days. So make sure you've subscribed and followed me. I really appreciate that. I have a series called Small Astrology on here, which if you are interested in your astrology and how it showed up as a child and how you might have created programs around that, go and check it out. If you are a parent who has small humans, it's very helpful for understanding how their sun sign energy affects their behavior and what is the best way to talk them through it and help them understand their astrology, so that they can grow into the most evolved versions of their astrological energy. I'll have a children's book coming out on the 1st of March. You can pre-order it now at a discounted rate on my website. And yeah, nice to see you back. And I hope this was helpful. And as always, don't be afraid to walk into your shadow and face all of the demons in there. And don't be afraid to walk out your front door as a completely transformed human that nobody else will recognize. We are in the transition between ages, and we are shifting and evolving at a very fast rate, and we need to be open to that. I'll see you on the socials. I'll see you in the live tarots. Till then, stay weird.